Imagine going to bed one night, not knowing that nuclear missiles were potentially minutes away from launching. This wasn't a nightmare. This was November 1983, when the world teetered closer to nuclear war than almost any other time in history, including the Cuban Missile Crisis. The year 1983 marked one of the most dangerous periods of the Cold War. Soviet-American relations had deteriorated to their lowest point in decades. President Ronald Reagan had labeled the Soviet Union an evil empire, while Soviet leaders were convinced the United States was plotting a surprise nuclear attack. In the early hours of September 26, 1983, alarms blared at a secret bunker near Moscow. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov was the duty officer that night, monitoring Soviet satellites for signs of American missile launches. Suddenly, his system detected 5 nuclear missiles heading toward the Soviet Union from the United States. Protocol demanded that Petrov report this as a nuclear attack. Soviet military doctrine called for an immediate retaliatory strike. With only minutes to decide, the fate of millions rested on his shoulders. But something didn't feel right to Petrov. He reasoned that a real American first strike would involve hundreds of missiles, not just 5. Against procedures, he reported it as a system malfunction. He was right. The satellite warning system had mistaken sunlight reflecting off clouds for missile launches. Petrov's decision to trust his instincts may have prevented a nuclear war. But this was just the beginning of 1983's nuclear close calls. Just weeks later, the world would come even closer to the brink. In early November, NATO began a military exercise called Able Archer 83. This was meant to simulate how a nuclear war might unfold, including practicing the procedures for releasing nuclear weapons. The exercise was unprecedented in its scale and realism. What NATO didn't realize was that the Soviet Union was watching with mounting panic. Soviet intelligence had convinced their leaders that Able Archer might be a cover for a real nuclear first strike. The Soviets' fear wasn't entirely paranoid. They had painful memories of Nazi Germany using military exercises as cover for their 1941 invasion. Soviet nuclear forces were placed on high alert. Nuclear-capable aircraft in East Germany and Poland were fueled and armed with nuclear weapons. Additional submarines carrying nuclear missiles were deployed. The Soviet military prepared for what they believed might be an imminent American attack. Making matters worse, 1983 had already been a year of escalating tensions. The Soviet Union had shot down Korean Airlines Flight 407 in September, killing all 269 passengers and crew, including an American congressman. President Reagan had announced the Strategic Defense Initiative, dubbed Star Wars, which the Soviets saw as an attempt to make a first strike possible. American intelligence agencies had no idea how close to war they had come until years later. Declassified documents revealed that Soviet leaders had seriously considered launching a preemptive nuclear strike during Able Archer, believing they might be hours away from an American attack. The crisis passed when Able Archer concluded on November 11th, but its lessons remain chilling. A mixture of misunderstanding, paranoia, and technical glitches had brought the world to the edge of nuclear annihilation. Neither superpower had actually wanted war, but their mutual fear and suspicion nearly triggered one anyway. The 1983 nuclear scares profoundly affected both sides. When American intelligence analysts later understood how close they'd come to war, it sparked a reevaluation of how military exercises were conducted. Reagan himself was sobered by the revelation, leading him to moderate his stance toward the Soviet Union in his second term. The events of 1983 reveal how the Cold War's most dangerous moments weren't always obvious at the time. While the Cuban Missile Crisis played out in newspaper headlines, the Able Archer crisis nearly started World War III without most people even knowing about it. Today, As tensions between nuclear powers rise again, the lessons of 1983 remain relevant. The combination of hair-trigger alert systems, mutual suspicion, and the potential for misunderstanding creates a constant risk. We came closer to nuclear war than we knew, saved only by the cool judgment of individuals like Stanislav Petrov and the lucky timing of events. The story of 1983 reminds us that the greatest danger isn't always deliberate aggression, but the possibility that nuclear war could start through miscalculation, misunderstanding, or mistake. In a world where nuclear weapons still exist, these lessons are more important than ever.